Hello everyone, welcome back to Atreyu Crochet. So in today's video, I'm going to be answering why when I crochet, it gets smaller. Why does my crochet get smaller? So as you can see, this is an example of how a piece of crochet, this is just a little swatch, should look, right? It's not getting wider and it's not getting narrower because it's not supposed to. And one of the things that you will notice as you go from each row is that the number of stitches is being maintained. Let's count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then right here is 6. In this row, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This row, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And this final fourth row, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? So in each of these rows, I have maintained the same number of stitches. So that's definitely one of the first places that you want to look. If your project is getting smaller, make sure that you have the correct number of stitches in the row. Okay? So that means you're not decreasing. And then another thing to check is to make sure that your tension, how tightly you pull on the yarn and crochet with, if that is being maintained, if it's consistent. If your tension increases, meaning if you start to all of a sudden pull tighter on the yarn, then that could also affect the size of your work. So let's look at some examples. So remember how this looks, embed that in your brain, okay? And now let's go to our first example. So here is an example where we started out with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stitches right here, okay? And then in the next row, seems pretty consistent in terms of the width. Let's count the stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, that explains why it looks pretty consistent. But then in this next row, we see it starts to go in. It starts to get smaller. And this is what many of you guys are wondering about. Why is it getting smaller? Well, remember, one of the first things I told you to check is the number of stitches for that row where it starts to get smaller. Remember, we had 6 here, we had 6 here, we should have 6 here. So let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, we only have 5 stitches. Okay, so that explains why it's smaller. There are fewer stitches. Now the next question is, why are there fewer stitches? Well, as we get closer and we analyze this, we see, okay, there's a stitch in that one, there's one 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 in that one. But this one doesn't have a stitch. Okay, so when I was crocheting, I forgot to put a stitch in that one, and that's why I have 5. Let's look at this row. This had 5, it should have had 6. This one looks like it only has 1, 2, 3, 4. It should have also had 6. But because this one only had 5, then at the very least this one should have 5 stitches. So what happened with this row? Well, this one is in that one, this one has that one, this one has that one, this one has that one. This one doesn't have a stitch. That's what happened to that extra stitch. I see. Okay, so I missed a stitch in that one. So it looks like there's a pattern here. I'm missing that final stitch on the end of each of these rows. And as a result, I'm getting 1 less stitch per row. So I have 6 stitches here. Then I missed that one, so I have 5 stitches there. Then I missed that one, so I have 4 stitches here. And then if we look here, only 3 stitches. But I can tell that's in that, that's in that, that's in that. That one right there doesn't have a stitch. So I missed that one there. And as a result, I only have 3 stitches. So this is an example of why your crochet gets smaller from row to row. It's because you're not maintaining the same number of stitches. Okay? So remember, with this one, I kept 6 stitches all along in each row. This one I didn't. I missed the end stitch. But what if you say, well, I checked my end stitches and I didn't miss any of those. So why is it smaller? Well, let's look at this example. Here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This one we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're sitting pretty good. Here, this one has 1. This one is there. This one is there. Oh, I see a hole there. So this stitch doesn't have 1. This one has that one. And that one has that one. Okay. Let's count the number of stitches in this row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So even though I remembered to get the ends, I accidentally skipped a stitch in the middle of the row. And that's how I ended up with only 5 stitches when I should have had 6. Okay? So that's why I say that it's very important for you to count the number of stitches and make sure that you're maintaining them. You might miss a stitch at the end of a row, or you might miss it in the center. Okay, it will still affect the overall size. Okay, so you see this one starts to pull in a little bit. Okay, but then it's compounded when we get to the next row. So we chain up 3 here, so that's in that. This is in that. That one's in that. Once again, there's no stitch there. So the next stitch, which should have been in the stitch that was there, is in that one. And then once again, I got the end. So because I put 1 stitch in each of the stitches of the row below, I maintained 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stitches. So it's definitely narrower than it should be, because each row should have 6 stitches. So just make sure that in each row you are maintaining the correct number of stitches. Alright, let's look at one last example of why your work might get smaller. So remember I told you the first place to look is the number of stitches. The second thing that you should pay attention to is your tension. So let's count the stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Second row, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Third row, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Fourth row, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you have the correct number of stitches in this example. But the problem, because you see this is a little bit narrower in these 2 rows especially, the problem is the tension. Notice how much smaller these stitches are up here than they are down here. It's because there was more tension up here. And because you were crocheting tighter, and most likely you were unaware of it, it made your stitches smaller. So it's not as drastic or as noticeable a difference as the other examples where it got smaller, but it's definitely narrower. Okay, so remember, if you want to get it more consistent, then you want to maintain the correct number of stitches per row, and you want to try to maintain a consistent tension. Okay, so these are just a few examples of why your crochet might be getting smaller. Okay, be sure to check your tension and definitely make sure you're maintaining the correct number of stitches. I do hope that this video was helpful, and I will be seeing you in the next video where I discuss why your crochet is getting larger. In the meantime, happy crocheting!